On this episode of The Open Road, it's Bumblebee. So of course this isn't the real Bumblebee, this is the Chevy Camaro being brought in by HSV. As we know, HSV are trying something a little bit different because of the whole GM relationship and all that sort of jazz. They are bringing in the Silverado and now the Camaro, which is pretty awesome because that means that we're going to get a taste of some international vehicles that we wouldn't have otherwise seen. This whole exercise for HSV is quite an interesting one. They're trying something different, which is great, and it's great for the consumer. Only 550 of these cars are being made, and only 38 of those are ending up in New Zealand. They're all being made in the original factory, right next to the left-hand drive versions. However, they are being stripped from the B-pillar forward and having about 400 new parts added or modified to make them right-hand drive. It's going to be pretty interesting for HSV how well these sell. I would be surprised if they don't all sell out, the New Zealand allocation anyways. They're not an overly expensive car at $109,000 for what is the SS model, and you're getting a lot of car for your money. Let's take a closer look. Now, being a new generation car, this is the MY18. This is the LT motor, which some of you might not have even heard of yet. We all know the LS, the LS7, the LSX, the LSA, love those engines. This is an LT and it's really quite different, but we'll get a bit more into that when we're actually out on the road. Now around the back, being a sports car, this actually has got quite a lot of space in the boot. But as we know about Camaros, the thing is you could probably fit about 4 or 5 bodies in here. But interestingly, the opening is quite small, so you're going to have to section them first. Now the styling on this car, of course, is subjective and has been up for debate on the website with the images that we've put up already. We did actually go out and do a little photo shoot with this car last week, and what we found is it's really only good from a couple of angles. It's got a beautiful face, it's got an outstanding rear end, but that's about it. Kind of like me. Now the interior of this car, for the money, is actually quite impressive. It does feel very GM, and we actually compared it to a new Commodore the other day, and it is very similar in the terms of the quality of the trim. There are a few little quirks and features, things I like, things I don't. For example, one of the things that stood out to me very early on was these dials here is exactly how you change the temperature of the air conditioning. It's a nice touch, it's very elegant. It's a very driver orientated vehicle, and being a sports car, that's exactly what you want. Other than that, I found that this car was pretty basic, but again, it's a sports car, it doesn't need to have all the bells and whistles. But it does have a lot of bells and whistles, which is quite good. The dash is quite nice, it's got original analog dials for the speedo and the rev counter, that's pretty cool, and then the center is just one big digital dash. The seats in the driving position are absolutely amazing. One of the great things about this car is that your butt is about the same level as the heel of your feet, which gives you a very flat and very low surface and makes it feel very much like a race car. I very much appreciate that. And I also found that in terms of size, me being 6'2" and 100 and shut up kilos, I've found that I'm very, very comfortable in this car, but I guess that's the thing, is that these are made for larger American people, thus I feel very comfortable. I've got plenty of headspace when I'm driving, so it's great. Something that came up that was actually a little bit of a serious concern. If you're like me and you like to drive with one hand on the wheel and one hand on the stick, something very interesting happened. Right behind there is the traction control button. Now, if you turn that off with 399 kilowatts and no traction control, that wakes you up in the morning, especially if you do it by accident and you weren't planning on it, which has happened to me twice. So now, I'm always driving at 9 and 3, because 10 and 2 is wrong. But I think that's about enough jibber jabber from me. What do you say we take this old girl for a ride? Let's do this. Interesting point, interesting place to start. The steering on this is both progressive and electronic. As you know, I'm not a big fan of electronic power steering. However, this does actually do quite a good job of it. There's no feedback, didn't expect there to be any, but what it does is if you're in tight spots like this and you're in a car park, super easy. Then when you get out onto the main road, it firms up a bit. It's quite cool. As big and tough and cool as it looks and all that sort of jazz, it's actually not that low in the front. I was a little bit concerned a couple of times that I was going to scrape the front of it and didn't, so that's good. We do have a couple of driving modes, and to be fair, they don't make a huge amount of difference. We've got touring, we've got sport, we've got track, and then we've got snow and ice. I've been driving around in sport pretty much all the time. The only real difference between the first three is throttle response and where the engine will change gears. So, and also how long it'll hold those gears. And I've found sport to be the nicest of all of them, just in terms of downshifting when you're slowing down, or if you're braking hard, it'll sort of kick it down for you and all that sort of jazz. This new motor, it's interesting. It's quite a Jekyll and Hyde in terms of the engine itself. And what I mean by that is that you can drive around all day, never going over 2,000 RPM, unless you want to have a bit of fun and you wind it out. And that's where this engine really comes alive. And I think that since we're about to get on the motorway, we need to give it a bit of a squirt. Oh, that sounds good. Sounds so good. It's a beautiful note to this engine. Something that I really appreciate about this car though, in terms of economy, is that we can be driving at 100k, we're not quite doing it now, there's a bit too many cars on the road, but basically 100k at 1500 RPM, easy peasy. So you can be quite economical, which is impressive. I actually managed to get this car down to 7.4 litres per 100 kilometres, which is great fun. And then you put your foot down and it gets expensive, but it's still fun. In terms of comfort on the road, I gotta say, it's pretty comfortable. The cabin is very quiet, and actually the time that I noticed that the most was when I was sitting in the car revving it to show off a bit, because as you do, and I opened the door so I could hear it, and it was night and day. It was so much louder, which means two things. One, the cabin sound deadening is amazing, and the other thing means the exhaust note is a lot louder than you think it is, and your neighbours hate you. But yeah, no, I'm cruising along, pretty much motorway speed, happy as Larry, very comfortable. The suspension, well, the ride is interesting because it's initially quite sharp. You do feel a lot of the bumps, which is good because it gives you some feedback through your feet, your backside, things like that. But if you're buying a Super Sport Camaro, there are going to be some trade-offs. One of them is going to be the ride quality in terms of comfort. And hey, it's not a huge deal. Like, it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. I'd quite contently drive this down to Wellington and be the happiest person on the road. I think what I'm getting at is that it's interesting where I think because it's got the big wheels, the low profile tyres, but good suspension, it absorbs the bumps and you don't notice the big stuff. Like, you don't feel like you're a bottoming mountain or anything like that. However, you do feel all of the little bumps on the road, which is I actually quite like. I'm saying that in a good way because, again, this is a driver's car, it's a sports car. You want to have that conversation. Plenty of features and creature comforts. Something that was a very big negative for this car was the visibility. The side panels are really high, the windows are really skinny. The rear window, you can more or less see what's directly behind you, but not anything that's real close. But the real problem with this car is backing out anywhere and trying to see what's behind you. There is a reversing camera, which is a good camera, and if it wasn't for that, I would have hit a bunch of stuff already. But then the blind spot you can literally put a truck in, and thankfully it's got blind spot warning, which is a real handy little feature. Creature comfort, this is a really well appointed car for a sports car. It's got a fantastic stereo system, one of the best stereo systems I've had the pleasure of reviewing, I must say. whoever had it before me had a terrible tune on it, but I fixed that and now it's just nice. Air conditioning is pretty good. I actually didn't think the air conditioning was that great at first until I opened the door and it was 32 degrees outside. And then I realized just how good the air conditioning actually was. Heating and cooling seats. The cooling seats are absolutely amazing, and I was running the other day with full aircon and cooling seats, and yeah, it's a great way to cool a car down on a very hot day. But what's interesting about it is the way that you drive it. Like, I expected to be driving this hard a lot, and I haven't been for two reasons. One, it's very expensive, and two, it's actually quite hard to do because all of the power is really high up in the rev range. With the new engine, you find that winding it out is actually quite difficult. So where I've had the most fun with this car has been on back roads, B roads, open roads, things like that, where you can actually start working through second and third and fourth at rev and really enjoy it. I gotta tell you, I did take this up State Highway 16 all the way up to Wellsford, and that road, perfect road for this car. There are so many spots where you can throw this through a bend, and the fact that this car has zero body roll and will grip like you would not believe. Like, this is an American car that can actually go around corners. And not only can it go around corners, it goes around corners incredibly well. I was not only surprised, I was almost shocked at how well this car handles given where it's come from. There's a lot to like about this car, and there's a couple of things I want to say that may sound negative, but I personally think are a positive. For example, this car I would classify as twitchy, and I mean that in a good way. For example, the brakes, very, very, very stabby. The steering, little inputs, really responsive. I love that. I absolutely love that. Like, give you a random example, like when people jump on some of my bicycles, I've seen people go over the handlebars on my bikes because my brakes are so strong and stabby, and that's what these brakes are like. And I love that. It just means that it means that once you get to know how the car is going to react to your input, you can do the absolute minimum and get the most out of it. And I like that. What that means is that you can, like a little flick of the steering wheel and you're almost in the other lane, which is great. I love it. It just makes you can be so delicate whilst driving the car and get such a big response out of it. And I love that. The only place I would say that is not like that is the throttle response. Even in track mode, it does take a while for it to sort of wake up and go, oh, I'm a motor and you want power? Let me get right onto that. But, it's a big V8. That's going to happen anyway. Something that this car can do quite well that Mustangs cannot do at all is it can accelerate around corners onto B roads really well. Like, that wasn't a complete T section, and there wasn't a crowd, but this thing, one of the most fun things you can do in this car is to take off going out of an intersection onto a 100k road. Now, we've almost accidentally ended up in Kumu. Now, if you know anything about why Kumu is interesting for this car, it's because of the Kumu Hot Rod Show, which is an annual hot rod show, a muscle car show that happens every year. And maybe this is the holy grail for New Zealand for this car. It's going to where it needs to be. We're in West Auckland. I don't have a mullet at the moment, but a Tesla. Well, that doesn't work, does it? Well, we're here at Gate 6 at Kumu Showgrounds. This is where anybody who knows about hot rods and muscle cars brings their car every year to show off and to be part of the community. And this is exactly where this car belongs. I absolutely adore this car. It's got so many great things going for it. I love the look, I love the performance, I love the ride. So many awesome things about it. The stark reality is there's only 38 people in this country that are going to own this car. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be one of those lucky 38. Maybe I'll become friends with someone who has. I think between now and then I'm going to enjoy the rest of my time with this car, and I'm going to enjoy it to its fullest performance. And until then, we'll see you next time on the open road. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can see all our new videos. And again, thank you for watching. See ya.